It is the job of a medical examiner to investigate a death when foul play or violence is suspected. It's an unlikely subject, perhaps, for a popular television show, but that's what Quincy, the television show, is all about, the one that stars Jack Klugman. But Hollywood, as always, sort of exaggerates a little bit, and tonight we're going to find out what a medical examiner's job is really like. We'll meet Dr. Ann Dixon, who is the counterpart of Quincy here in Baltimore. She's a medical examiner here. And I should warn you that many of you might not like to watch this story, and you may not want your children to watch it just because of the nature of the story, but we felt like it was an important subject and worth covering.
Gentlemen, we're about to enter the fascinating sphere of police work, the world of forensic medicine.
In this building at 111 Penn Street is the office of the medical examiner for the state of Maryland. The old image of the morgue and the coroner's wagon is gone. The modern-day medical examiner is, in fact, a medical detective. It is the examiner's job to investigate sudden or unnatural deaths to determine the cause. The science of forensic pathology is used to find and interpret the clues that lead to a conclusive cause of death. Dr. Ann Dixon is one of the state's 6 medical examiners, and one might think that she's rather unique in the field because she's a woman. But many women have entered the field of forensic pathology over the last 10 years. Here in Maryland, half of the medical examiners are women.
We're mainly looking for cause of death, but our main purpose in life, in a sense, is to determine the nature and extent of injuries when they have contributed to an individual's death, so that a lot of our efforts, in a sense, are not just diagnosing that so-and-so had a heart attack, but to also exclude the presence of trauma. So we check for evidence of injury internally, externally, and we obviously try to determine cause of death. I think on the whole I'm not too bothered by most everything that comes in here. The most disturbing, as far as I'm concerned, are the cases in which there is dismemberment, either accidental or homicidal. Those, I think, are the most difficult to handle.
The laboratory plays a big part in investigations into the cause of death. After the autopsy is completed, the toxologists take over in the labs. Their job is to find out if there are drugs, alcohol, or other foreign substances in the body. There are over 20,000 slides a year produced by the histology lab. They're used to confirm the diagnosis made during the autopsy. They're also used as teaching aids. Teaching is an important part of the medical examiner's work. Law enforcement officers, physicians, and other pathologists are taught how to investigate a sudden or unnatural death. There are various teaching aids used in this instruction.
These are a series of bits and pieces from various cases that the office has investigated through the years. For example, these shoes were worn by a man who was struck by lightning, and you can see readily the destruction that was rendered when the lightning passed through his body and out of his feet.
Dr. Russell Fisher has been Maryland's chief medical examiner for the last 20 years. He established the Maryland facility as one of the first training centers for forensic pathologists.
In an effort to commit suicide by overdosing himself with Freon, and it is a fairly dangerous gas to have loose, and he succeeded. This is the bones from a bear's foot, which were brought in under the assumption that the foot of a female and therefore represented, or the hand of a female and therefore represented a murder case. In fact, this is another bear's foot, and while they do look very similar, the expert recognizes them immediately. This is, by comparison, an anatomical specimen from the anatomy collection over at university showing the real shape and size of the woman's hand.
Photographs are an important tool for the medical examiner. They're used as evidence in court and also to reconstruct the scene of a death.
This individual was shot and killed by a headshot, and the story was offered that her husband had a small gun which he dropped, and it went off and shot her. When we came to examine the wound, we saw the bullet entrance wound itself, which is of course lacerated, but in addition a small round circle of abrasion and laceration in the skin, and then a tiny little ring of abrasion below that. But when one compares the muzzle of the gun with the two impressions that I've just pointed out, one realizes that this gun was in such tight contact with the face at the time of the shot that the muzzle imprint was left on the skin. This was sufficiently convincing to the jury that they didn't embrace the accidental excuse that was offered and found her husband guilty of shooting her.
I spent some time dealing with live patients, and I didn't really find it any more rewarding to treat live patients than I find it dealing with dead people.
There are rewards. The fact that we are able to make identification and supply information vital to helping the remaining members of a family, the fact that we're able to determine how a death occurred and many times ensure the rights of the family in the courts in terms of double indemnity and accidental benefits or workman's compensation benefits. All of this gives one a sense of satisfaction that he's accomplishing something, that we're not merely serving the dead but the living survivors, and that is our real mission.
Perhaps the phrase by Hippocrates that you see when you first enter the medical examiner's office sums up the attitude of these hard-working people. It reads, "Wherever the art of medicine is practiced, there is also a love of humanity." We'll be back in just a minute.